behalf of the Secretariat and the co-chairs, I'm Jyoti Mathur Philip. I am the Director for Implementation at the Secretariat. This information briefing is organized by the co-chairs of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, Mr. Francis Ogwal of Uganda and Mr. Basil Van Avre of Canada, and the Secretariat of the CBD. It is on the outcomes of the third meeting of the working group held in Geneva from 14th to 29th of March, and on the preparations for the upcoming fourth meeting of the working group that will take place in 2 weeks in Nairobi, Kenya, from 21st to 26th of June. The briefing is being held twice to accommodate participants joining from different time zones. We are pleased to say we had a very successful first session yesterday, and we are holding this second session today to accommodate those who could not take part in the first time. A few points for housekeeping. Following the co-chair's presentation, we hope to have some time for questions and answers. To ask a question, please type it in the question box. I will then moderate your questions and address them to the co-chairs. Kindly be reminded this is not a negotiation session, but an opportunity for you to seek clarification and to help prepare parties and stakeholders for the upcoming fourth working group meeting. This session is being recorded and the recording will be posted on the CBD website. With that, I hand over to Francis and Basil. Over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we're going to do this in two parts. Basil and I will share the slides. I'll take some first few slides and then Basil will complete the rest. So Basil, maybe if you could share your screen.
You should see now the title.
Yes, I can see. Okay, so we could go to the next slide. So in terms of the outline of our presentation, we are going to be giving you an update on what happened at the second meeting of the third meeting of the working group, where we're going to be giving you some few points on reflections, where we are with the GBF, and then some lessons that we've learned. Then the second part, we are going to be telling you about the fourth meeting of the working group, in which case we shall tell you the objectives of that meeting, the modalities, organization of work, and then the agenda and schedule of the meeting. Could we go to the next one, please? So as the co-chair comes with the next slide, we would like to tell you that the meeting that took place in Geneva, we of course did underestimate time that was needed for us to do that work. Remember, it was 3 meetings at one go. We had SBI, we had Substar, and then we had the working group. So it was a challenge. For the first time, you remember the other first 2 meetings of the working group were only for post-2020. This is where there were these 3 happening at one go. So we realized that we underestimated the time that was needed. And then parties, of course, did take ownership of the text, especially those that were negotiated, and we shall be touching that. Initially, there was that concern that the text was in for parties, but we are glad that after Geneva now, we at least have what is a party text in this framework. And still there is a long way to go with that draft. It is complex. There are duplications across targets because so many inputs came in on those targets and goals. So we need to really be looking a little bit more on how we move forward there. For us, we are looking at a situation where we should be able to narrow down so that we narrow down that text which we are talking about, which is very complex, so that it can really, enable us to do or make progress in terms of developing the framework. And we noticed during that meeting that a lot of progress was made in Friends of the Co-Leads or Friends of the Co-Chairs, but I think we didn't have Friends of the Co-Chairs there. We only had Friends of the Co-Leads. And in the contact groups, that is really where we are still hoping to see progress being made as well when in Nairobi. On DSI, we must say that, of course, what we saw from there and what came out from there was beyond our expectation. We were kind of worried, but I think we made very significant progress on DSI. And basing on that, we see that when parties are really determined and engaged finding a solution, they always find one. And that is what we want you to take to Nairobi. Get engaged, find a solution, and let's move forward. Let's not keep going back and forth. The next slide, please. So the next slide here is a summary of the GBF status, like I told you in the outline. Tries to give you where we are in the framework. So I'll start from my right, then head towards the left, where on the first column, that is where you see listed just below significant negotiation at that meeting, second meeting, physical meeting of the resumed meeting of the working group, is where you see those listed, we made progress on them. I will not mention all of them. So whatever you see on the right-hand side of your screen, that is where we have made progress. That is where we have much of this composite text in. And that is where we are saying we need to be narrowing down and see how we make the text much more smaller so that we can move with the discussion. But most importantly, you will see that target 19, which was previously one target, is now 19.1, 19.2, because resource mobilization and capacity building have now been split. Of course, initially we had that we should merge the two, which we did. But parties again have come and said, no, it creates a little bit of vagueness, so let them be separate, and therefore the discussion on resource mobilization and capacity building will be separate under those targets. So the targets could increase in number. Then you have partially negotiated, they are listed there. I'll not spend time on them, but you can see them on your screen. And there's the section BBs. I'll be touching something on milestones as well as the time frame. And then on the left-hand side, not negotiated at all, you can see section A, B, C, D, H, I, J, K. So, and then the COP decisions. So that is time quotas. As we said earlier, we did underestimate the time that was needed. But fortunately, we have the fourth meeting coming up. Next slide. Yeah, so I think what we are also seeing forward here is that with the time, we could actually still, if we invest more time, but carefully because of the little time we have, we could see how to address now, well, when in Nairobi, those places where we see a lot of duplications. Could we target, could we see how we move forward? And then the BBs, we see that if we do it early, it could facilitate the negotiation on goals and targets. And this will also I'll touch on the same when I get to the milestones. Now, where the text was not negotiated, as I said earlier, then the first draft remains what you will be basing on for the negotiation. But also, you need to take care of the following. One, that there are very good information from the co-leads observation and reflections in that document CBD/WG2020-4 Inf1. You need to look at that. But again, the co-chairs reflection still remains a document that could help you move forward. And we've seen that the co-chairs reflection was, the text were a little bit narrow, shorter. But we encourage parties to see how to make use of this, especially when we get to Nairobi, because we are heading to where now would be our very last chance to make progress on the post-2020. But also that indicators Could also be a good idea to look at them as we negotiate the goals and targets. And then we also did touch about the issue of the workloads. And you're going to see how we've tried our best to make sure that we try to balance the workloads among the contact groups. You'll even see that we have created another contact group called Contact Group 6. Let's go forward, Coach. Yeah, I think due to time difference, it takes a little bit of a while to show if you are trying to get me. Yes. So what is the objectives of our meeting when we're in Nairobi? And I'll try to explain this as much as I can. First is that there is the outcome of Geneva. Those what were fully negotiated. So that one is going to form the text negotiation. But again, as we said, where we have not yet done so, then we still go back to the first draft of the post-2020. Now, we need to do the following. If we are going to move forward, one, in Nairobi, let's come ready to compromise. And also, let's really work as much as we can to have a clean text, removing as many of those brackets, if not all of them. And perhaps the most important one here is narrowing down on this composite text. Already this morning we're hearing how different is the Nairobi meeting going to be compared to the one which was in Geneva. Because if we come with the same mindset, then we are going to duplicate Geneva in Nairobi. And that will be very unfortunate for us all. So we are encouraging you not to add new text on what was already negotiated. Those ones on the right-hand side of the screen that you saw presented, please, please, please don't add text there. Focus on narrowing them down, have it in a smaller 1 or 2 to 3 lines, or even 2 lines or 1 line. Let's have them narrowed down. Look at where we are duplicating words and meanings and things. Remove them. Agree that your interests are covered when this word or the other word is used, and maybe not exactly the way you want it. We need to make progress in Nairobi. Now, on the milestones, and yes, I will be presenting on them, but we need to resolve early as well how we are going to really handle the milestones, but also for the DSI, how we are going to place them in the framework. Our co-chair, next slide. Yeah, it takes a bit of a while, but it's coming soon, I suppose. Still not visible. Yes. So this is the nutshell, and I will not spend a lot of time on this. Most of you have seen this, but just to let you know that even from the co-chairs reflection document and the GBF draft 1, we have greatly continued to improve on the theory of change. Now you see this where we are proposing that perhaps we summarize those the action targets on reducing threats, on meeting people's needs, on tools and solutions, that we could summarize them. Because this could be something that somebody just picks and talks about post-2020 global biodiversity framework, because everything is in there. You're having the mission, you're having the goals, you're having the targets, you're having the drivers on the other side, you're having the status of biodiversity because of those indirect and direct drivers interacting together, giving that. So, and then the vision 2050 on the other side. So if somebody just picked this should be a very good communication tool. Co-chair, next slide. Yes, so in Nairobi, the modalities for the meeting, this is of course standard in-person meeting, and provision is being made for us to have online participation, but only will be limited to a few instances, and especially in situations where parties may not be able to travel, can be given that right to participate online, but also where you might end up testing positive, as we saw in Geneva, then you again have to be given a right to speak virtually. And then during the parallel sessions where we may have single delegates, again, you never can tell what might happen to one delegate. Even if you are sponsored to, one person might fall sick on the day of travel or something like that, and you end up with one rather than two. And then we are going to have the regional meetings. Now, in terms of COVID policy, there will be no limit to the number of delegates on the compound, but only those that are entering a plenary, that's where we could limit the number, or the number will be limited. Daily testing, as most of you now know, the progress or how what happened in Geneva. And of course, we want to avoid overflow of rooms and then have that iterative online process. Co-Chair. So the next slide I'll be touching on really as it comes on is the organizational work, which is now there as you see it. So it is a period covering 6 days. And really, we have to say this from the beginning, that 6 days is not a lot. If you look at the text that has come from Geneva, really 6 days is just very few days for us. So we must make use of it. And so we are not going to have days off. I think in Geneva we had that opportunity, but we are going to work up to the very end. We are going to have daily bureau and regional meetings. Full day for the regional meetings is going to take place on 20th June. And then the plenaries are likely to be 3, but I'll give you that detail when I get there. And we are going to keep this schedule as flexible as possible as we held it, and we'll have lessons we've learned from Geneva that whenever possible, we are going to really try to accommodate emerging issues. And we are going to have 4 information sessions. We don't want to have a lot of them there because we want this meeting to focus on post-2020, and most of those will be related to the post-2020 itself. Then on the SBI and Substack chairs, we shall expect them to give us some updates on progress to date, including, of course, now, lastly, how the COP will help us reconcile some differences that we may not agree during this process. Co-Chair. So in the next slide that comes, I'll mainly touch briefly on the co-leads. Most of you know them. The one that I was talking about, you can see it there, is contact group 6 that is now going to handle section A to E, H to K, but also including BBs. We found out that combining these for those contact groups, again, like with the group handling goals to handle sections A to E and the others, they hardly had time, and we couldn't keep going on like that. So this is why this contact group 6 is created, and you can see the membership there. It is Galo. We have Dastos from Tajikistan, and then Mary May from Seychelles. Forgive me for the pronunciation of the delegate from Tajikistan. My tongue is a bit not pronounced so well, but let's go to the next slide. Then I think I'll hand over to the co-chair. And the next slide basically tells you about, so this is it about us in this meeting, that while we are there, we are not going to keep our co-leads distant from us. Our objective is to meet with these people as much as we can to ensure that we are coherent and that we are integrating with them as much as we can for the process to go on well. We shall be developing, agreeing on strategies to address difficulties, and even where we are seeing there is so slow progress in contact groups, we need to see how we address that, so that as they go into the contact groups, they can guide parties, but also increase process for by parties, and then avoid overlap and duplication. So the co-leads will need to be very familiar with the whole GBF as such. So they're also doing enough reading on their part. So in terms of preparation with them, we are aiming to have 3 virtual meetings. We are going to have 1 today already and 1 physical in Nairobi, so that really we are up to speed and we are on the same page as we head there. So I think, co-chair, let me hand over the next slide, although I wanted covered, but you can now slide from 12 and the end.
All right, Francis, is this where you want me to take over from you?
Let me just touch that one last,
okay.
and then you can. Yeah. So the last slide you see here, and we've been talking about receiving updates from the SABSTA and SBI share, and you see in the middle is the working group or the post-2020 itself, the Global Biodiversity Framework. You will see that SABSTA and SBI have got very critical input into this process. For SABSTA, we are looking at the monitoring framework and the indicators as it relates to goals and targets. And that's why we said earlier on that we're also thinking that the discussion on indicators would also take place together with the discussion on goals and targets. And then on the other side, the implementation part of it, and we are saying the framework has to be implemented, So those other ones, you have got the Cartagena protocol implementation plan, resource mobilization, capacity building, financial mechanism and resource mobilization, communication strategy, mainstreaming, cooperation with other MEAs, gender action plan, monitoring, reporting, and review. So all that feeds into really the GBF. And so that's why you see that everywhere, every time we are meeting on GBF, the chairs of those two will always be giving us updates because there are good elements that is going to come from SBI and also the contribution from SABSTA to help us move forward with finalizing the GBF. I think, Co-Chair, now it is over to you to the next slides after the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, and good day to all of you. It's a pleasure to be able to present to you today. And as the slide is starting to show up, I want to mention that besides SABSTA and SBI contribution, we should have mentioned on the slide the contributions from the working group AJ that has been guiding us for a long time now. So let's turn to the section, and the first group is section A to E. That's going to be the purview of contact group 6. They will be addressing section B bis early, as it will be helping, we hope, the other contact group, and they will also be doing some really important work on our mission, negotiating the words. Now, turning to the following slide, which is going to be showing on your screen shortly, which is section A, F, and G on goals and targets. As you know, this is the purview of the contact group 1, 2, 3, and 4. We will pick up the discussion where we left it off in Geneva. So you'll be there mainly starting from the Geneva draft. Once again, as Francis has said, the recommendation we're making to you is to try to avoid duplication and simplify text. We hope you will be coming to the meeting with instructions and mandate to make compromise. We hope you'll have opportunities to meet bilaterally to resolve key divergence, and in that regard, the fact that there is no limitation in terms of presence on the UN compound will be very helpful. The consideration that has been guiding us all along remains. There is the urgency to act. The ability to implement is important. That notion of a whole of society approach and inclusivity, and the communicability of the GBF. We're very fortunate to have an active body of science advisor, and they have been contributing on a number of targets, not all, but as many as they could, and that has been provided to us for a couple targets already, and others are coming up, and we will get a briefing when we are in Nairobi. So this is going to be an important piece of information for all of you to guide you through your deliberation. Now, moving to the issue of milestone, and that's going to be showing up on your screen very shortly. I can see the progress on my screen here. We've talked about milestones in Geneva. That was done through a friend of the chair of Contact Group 1. What we heard is having a specific section on milestone was not supported, but there was a number of suggestions on how to incorporate elements of those milestones in goals and targets. It's important to keep in mind that goals and milestones are about the outcome. What changed? What is the state of things we want in 2030 and 2050? while the targets are about action, things we will be doing. Us, as staff, in terms of process, we want to enable a timely discussion and an efficient use of the time. We want to avoid duplication of the discussion in the contact group. The co-leads of Contact Group 1 are working on preparing a proposal for the placement of the milestone elements in the GBF. So we're going to see, and they've been contacting some of you directly to discuss that. We hope this proposal could be acceptable to you. If needed, if there is some difficulties, we can always create a new contact group on cross-cutting issues that will be dealing with this issue of milestone and perhaps also on a similar one on DSI. And this contact group will be meeting on the first day. And then we will be passing on this information to all the contact groups. Now, moving on to the values linkage between the subsidiary body, AJ, and us and the COP. We're going to move into description of some of those elements. First one is on indicators. As you know, there is a technical review that is being done from the long list of indicators that was submitted to Substar in Geneva. We're going to get a presentation of that, and that's going to be useful to us in our negotiation in Nairobi. The first job will be to define what we mean by headline indicators. I understand that there is still various views among you in terms of what's the definition. Then we will be negotiating the wording of the goals and targets, and in doing so, we should be considering what is proposed for indicators that may be helping you in terms of how, knowing that there is a certain level of detail that is captured in the indicators. And undoubtedly, through those discussions, there will be many comments made on indicators, and we will be collecting those and then communicating those to the Substar chair and the secretariat so that they're carried forward in the technical workshop that will take place in Bonn immediately after our meeting in Nairobi. Eventually, it will be up to you when you're back as a negotiation body, as the COP, to review, negotiate, and approve the set of indicators. Now, let's move on to digital sequence information. And first, some reflection. We were very happy to see the amount of progress made in Geneva. We expect that we also see the work being done by the informal advisory group over the last few weeks and know there is more coming. We will ask the co-leads of the IAG and DSI to provide an update when we get together in Nairobi. Nairobi will be an opportunity to also consider as needed the draft decision and taking into account the outcome of the previous work. We separate from that request we got from the COP to work on an update or to work on a solution for DSI. We also need to consider how we will be characterizing DSI in the GBF. Where should it be? There is various views on that. Some of you see it as a cross-cutting issue that should be reflected in several places. Others have noted that it belongs in more discrete part of the framework. So we're going to have a conversation about that and try to resolve it. But in a nutshell, and you will see in your screen a schematic very shortly. What we have is from Geneva. There was two action. One on the assessment of the policy options, and then the other one on the work of the advisory group. And those are being done. We will get an update. Unfortunately, they cannot be completed in time for Nairobi. That's quite normal. Those processes are lengthy, but we will get them in time for the COP. However, with that advice, we can look at the placement of the GBF in the GBF of the DSI issue. Let's turn now to section H to K, and that will be showing on your screen very shortly. This is again back to contact group 6. And you will see there that we will be getting a report from SBI on a number of sections. We've asked Charlotta to engage directly in the work, in the deliberation of the contact group. So she'll be there, she'll provide direct report on sections, and that's going to be very useful. We note that the open-ended working group may continue discussion and negotiation on particular elements. You may be putting things together as a system. You may make decision on certain definition, schedule, etc., which may be carrying it further or perhaps in a different way to where the SBI documents will have left it. In our views, this is all right, and this can be expected. It will be the job of the COP to reconcile that. I just want to note that we're not going to reopen the SBI document in our meeting. That's a separate process. At the end of the day, what we recommend is that you try to find the right balance in terms of the level of detail and what information will be presented in the GBF versus what will be presented in the COP decision. I know a number of you want to make sure that the GBF presents the key element of the change in one place, that people don't have to look over several documents to see the totality of the change, and that may require the presentation of a certain level of details on the supporting system. Others want to keep it high level and relevant to all, so have a neutral type of language and keep all the details in the COP decision. So that will have to be resolved. You will see showing on your screen a flow chart showing the various elements on resource mobilization and financial mechanism in the second. And yesterday we have attended a very useful discussion on that's one of those two informal consultation that took place on this, and it will be important to carry that information into our negotiation. So there will be the presentation by SBI chair, and then you will decide how much elements of that needs to be integrated in the GBF. Separately from that, those consultations will also be going to the COP. And we all know that there is a number of influential people trying to muster direct financial commitment. So that's going to be another important element. Now moving to the planning, reporting, and review process. We know, as mentioned earlier, SBI provided a number of very important decisions. But I think what we're going to need is how we assemble those various pieces or various building blocks into creating a system that we can understand. There is a peer review process that took place in April on annexes that's going to be useful. And then there is this very important workshop that will take place immediately before our meeting in Nairobi. And that's going to be very important. We're going to get the report from that workshop, and that's going to be fed into the negotiation. And we'll further the work as needed following that workshop and provide the guidance on integration of the elements to the COP. There may be, here again, a need to reconcile the various elements, and the COP undoubtedly will be able to do that. A few words on the glossary. As you know, we've been updating and modifying and enhancing the glossary all along. A number of comments were made in Geneva. We've collected all of them and updated the glossary. We also provided you with an information document that shows how each of those comments were addressed and how we were able. So in some cases, we recommended that this be discussion in the contact group. And then since we've done that, we've already received more comments and more additions. So definitively, we're looking forward to hear your views, and we'll continue to update the glossary. On the And the final section is on the decision. This will be done. The first reading will take place in the stock take plenary in the middle of the meeting, and that would be an appropriate time to start adding to the decision the elements you will want. So there will be an opportunity for that. So that's for the section by section review. Let's now turn to the agenda of the meeting and the last 3 slides. You will see on the screen the way we've structured the agenda is we gave priority first in terms of timing to the section that were not discussed in Geneva, then to the section that were partially discussed in Geneva that will bring everything to the same level. And then finally, we'll hope to go through the whole document to bringing it up to the stage where we want to be. There will be a need for an overall text review for consistency and integration. We expect this to take place towards the end of the week. One possibility to do that is to have a friend of the chair. I know that there is other possibilities, so we'll keep an open mind and listen to you and provide you with a recommendation when we get there. As you've heard, and as Francis had mentioned, we felt that the friend of the chair are a very appropriate format to advance the work, so we'll use that as needed. You will see that there is a parallel contact group, no more than 2 at each individual time, starting on June 22nd. We've also kept most of the evening open of contact group meeting so that it can be used for a friend of the chair. And then Francis talked about the information session. So what does that mean? That's a very short summary of what is happening before the formal meeting. There is the ISBER workshop. Then on the 19th, there is bureau meeting, and then the full day regional meeting on the 20th. Then shortly showing on your screen will be the agenda for the 6 days. And there you're gonna see on day 1 plenary, then the gray box are the information session. We're gonna have the monitoring information section. Then in the afternoon, contact group 6 will meet for the first time. We recommend that they deal with section H to K first, then switch in the evening to section A to D. On day 2, we'll start the parallel work with contact group 2 and 3. There is a very useful, we hope it will be useful, science presentation at lunchtime, then contact group 1 and 4. And then the contact group on DSI will be meeting in the evening, and on with the plenary stock take taking place on the 24th and then plenary on the 26th. And you will see that there is 2 sessions on Jeff in the middle and a very interesting action agenda information session toward the end. We're getting to the very end of this presentation. Once again, here is a list of all the documents you should have in your binder. Obviously, the agenda, the scenario note, the meeting report with the Geneva draft, the co-leads observation and their reflection, it's an document, our first draft, the reflection document, the monitoring framework, glossary, and science brief. So this completes the presentation. I tried to run quite fast to leave a little bit of time for the question and answers, and for that matter, I'll pass the floor back to Jyoti that will help us with this.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, co-chairs, for this presentation. We would now like to open it up for questions and answers based on the presentation that the co-chairs just made. I just want to remind you, this is not a negotiation session. And if you would like to ask a question, please type it in the question box. I have quite a few, of which I will already respond to 2, and then I will start asking some questions. There is a question about the bond workshop and who can participate in it. If you would go to our 4th of April notification, you will notice that only 25 people, experts that have been nominated, and 15 other experts are invited to this meeting, and this has been decided by the Substa Bureau. So now we have not. It's not an open. It's not an open meeting, so not everyone is invited to it. There is a question on where to access the Geneva draft. Well, the Geneva draft, or as we left the negotiations in Geneva, are attached as an annex to the report of the Geneva meeting, so you can access it from there. Now I can start asking, and a third question is on whether IGOs will be allowed to enter the meeting room during contact group sessions. Yes, a space permitting, at least one person per IGO is likely to be invited. So now we start on some questions. Is transformative change no longer an important consideration? So I'll give you a few, and then you can ask for you can respond. Thanks for organizing this briefing. It is useful. Am I getting feedback? Don't know why. Is it okay now? It is useful if I have got it right. Basil has said that the review of the list of indicators by the WCMC and the CBD Secretariat will be presented in a webinar prior to the Nairobi meeting. Has this webinar taken place? Maybe in March? If the former, can you please provide the link? I think you're talking about the information session, Basil, but I will let you answer. Would you be able to give more information on the more details on the information session? And then will we have a new document on indicators or any formal discussions in Nairobi? When will the updated monitoring framework indicator list be published? The review of the indicators is ongoing until 20th June. So do you want to, they all seem to be around the monitoring framework, so, and indicators. You want to take it, and the information session? Or do you want us to, you're mute.
Oh, thank you. Maybe quickly on transformative change. This is a presentation on our process of what we're trying to do in Nairobi, and definitively it's going to be up to you whether the notion of transformative change remain and how permanent it will be. So definitively on our side there is no judgment one way or the other. On the notion of the indicators and the work done by WCMC and the Secretariat, we know that we're going to have an information session early in the process. There was discussion some weeks ago about having a webinar, but I'll let the Secretariat give us the detail on that, because that's that's outside of our purview on the open-ended working group. That is something that is organized by the Substa chair and the Secretariat. But definitively, we're going to have the information session. I expect we're going to have the document, and I expect that those indicators will be considered as part of the negotiation. Now, time is limited, and our primary focus is on goals and targets. So I doubt we're going to have a lot of time to have in-depth discussion on indicators. But Francis, you may want to add to that.
Hello. I think just something little about transformative change, which you've already, of course, explained. I think for us as co-chairs, really, the focus is on us coming with a very good framework. Those goals, those targets, are they smart? Are they measurable? So it is the way we are going to craft those targets and goals that can take us to where we want. Because at the end of it all, when you look at what the framework aims to achieve, is that by 2050 we are living in harmony with nature. So that is a stage, really, if you look at it, that we are all working towards. And in a way, it talks that language, although we may not be saying it. But let's keep our attention now on this very complex text that has come up from Geneva and some of those that are yet to be negotiated, and see how we can resolve those ones, and then perhaps see where it takes us. Otherwise, trying to debate too much about the transformative change could generate a lot of debate and make us to delay progress here and there on those critical elements of the framework. That's what I could add.
Thank you so much. May I just add a little bit on the information sessions? Just to be clear, we will have 5 information sessions every day from Tuesday to Saturday, and these will be 1-hour sessions. The first one is on monitoring framework, the second is on science update, the third is on GEF 8. There are 2 on GEF. One is with a higher level on GEF 8 replenishment and the programming directions, and one on their GEF 8 strategy, and finally one on action agenda. They will take place between 1:30 and 2:30 every day. So just to be clear about that. I would like to ask when and how the work of the IAG on DSI will be reported. Will it be reported as an information document or communicated orally in Nairobi? It is reassuring to hear that discussion on headline indicators will be discussed in Nairobi. Could you confirm that the results of this discussion will be included in the official outcome of the working group? Then, does open-ended working group 4 have a mandate to discuss the definition of headline indicators, which has been subject and outcome of SubStar discussions? And thank you for the presentation. 2 questions. The workshop information sessions, are they available via online or recorded? Yes, so these are the ones. So all the information sessions, I can answer that question. All the information sessions are will be online, so you can access them. If you are registered, we will have them as interactive sessions, so you will be able to register them and also to register and be part of it. Also, there was a question about the indicators document. I just found out it should be going up shortly. Over to you.
Thank you. In terms of the how the open-ended working group will deal with both the definition of headline indicators and how it's going to be considered. It is going to be up to you, the parties, and in terms of defining how we're going to be setting up that planning, reporting, and review system, an element, a foundational element, is defining what we mean by headline indicators. So I expect you will want to have a discussion on that. Then the second point, and that's an important one, is how far will you go down the road of discussion on indicators? Our advice is that, so first let me preface that, but at the end of the day, at COP, the GBF will need to be approved, and together with that, a certain amount of indicators information. What we can do in Nairobi is negotiate the goals and targets, and in doing so, we'll keep in mind the indicators. Whether we will have time to have in-depth discussion on indicators, I doubt we're going to have that time. However, we will be capturing all the information that you will have expressed in those and given to us in those discussions and provide. So there will be no time loss. And when it comes to the question on the IAG and the SI, there will be an update done because the work of the IAG is not completed. There will be a meeting after Nairobi. So we're gonna get that update, and eventually there will be a full report that will be available before we get to the COP. So that's a few answers. Francis, over to you for any piece I would have missed.
Not really. I think everything is well said.
Thank you so much, both of you. There don't seem to be any more questions related to the working group right now, but I will now request David Cooper, our Deputy Executive Secretary, to perhaps answer some questions on COP15. And the question is there any update? There are a whole bunch of questions on that, but this one question encapsulates all the other queries. Is there any update on whether COP15 will take place in Kunming as scheduled? And what are the dates, or is there an indication when this information will be confirmed? Plus a question on the need to know about this because of working on the timeline. So David, over to you. You may also wish to talk a little bit about DSI if you wish to. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jyoti. So the Bureau met a couple of weeks ago to look at this issue, and it's clear that COP15 Part 2 will be held this year in 2022. There's a clear consensus across the board of the urgency of this and the need, therefore, to convene the meeting as soon as possible, and certainly in 2022. The Secretariat was asked to work with the presidency to look at alternatives, or look at options to make sure that this could happen. The Bureau will meet again next Monday, June the 13th, and we expect further clarity then and a final decision before the or at the opening of the meeting of the working group. But certainly COP15 Part 2 will take place in 2022, whether in Kunming or whether at an alternative location. And of course, we had Part 1 of COP15 in Kunming, and this just reminds me to also remind everyone to also look at the Kunming Declaration, where ministers at the high-level segment set out some aspirations for the post-2020 framework, and this also looks at the issue of transformative change. And just to note that on DSI, certainly there will be an information document. The last meeting of the informal advisor group before Nairobi takes place tomorrow morning, and we will, together with the co-leads of that group, endeavour to get the paper out as an information document, given a full report as soon as possible, also a summary in languages. And so this will come out, and then there will certainly be a briefing by the co-leads in the meeting in Nairobi as well. Thank you very much, and just wish everyone success in Nairobi, and as the co-chairs noted earlier, this is really the last chance to get the text of the framework in shape before we get to part 2 of COP15. There's no opportunity for further work of the working group before we meet for part 2 of COP15. So everyone should seize this opportunity to make progress on the text. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. I will, now that we are at the end of our Q&A, I wonder if you, Basil and Francis, want to make any closing remarks, or we just say goodbye.
Just saying goodbye, looking forward to see you, and thank you for all the work you've done in preparing. That is quite evidenced by the many workshops I've been hearing your views and comments. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Yeah, same to me. Just to wish everybody good health. See you in Nairobi, come energized. We have, as you've heard, this is our very last chance. So every second, every minute, every hour will count. While in Nairobi, come and let's do the final bit of what is left on the framework. So see you then.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Basil, and see you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.